We are live on RealGM Radio. Dakhil is here. I'm Wes Goldberg, and LeBron James is going at Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith is going at LeBron James. What does this all really mean, though, about the way the media covers the sport that we all love? Plus, we're going to get to that, Defensive Player of the Year candidates, and then our no-duh takes about the NBA Finals contenders. All of that and more coming up on today's RealGM Radio. RealGM Radio, I'm Wes Goldberg. Dakhil is here. He's one of our favorites. You can find his writing over at Bleacher Report. You find his show, The Jump Ball, on Twitch. A ton of stuff that I want to get to here with you, Mo. Thanks for jumping on. But the story that everybody's talking about is LeBron James. He goes on Pat McAfee, says a lot of things. And now Stephen A. Smith, a couple hours before we're recording this, is going back at LeBron James. There's a lot to get to. Frankly, I'm not that interested in the particulars of what it is that LeBron was saying and some of the things that he was insinuating or accusing people of. But to me, the why of it all is more interesting. Why would the league's biggest star go on Pat McAfee's show for an extended sit down, something we don't see him do very often, if ever, really, and then and using that platform to start going at journalists and media personalities with one of the league's biggest partners on that partner's airwaves? Is that good? I guess there's a lot of places we could take this, but do you think that that's good or bad for the sport, given that the sport has seemed to lean a little into the whole wrestling kind of off the court drama stuff to prop up some of the ratings and the interest in the league in general?
The only people, and first, Wes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
And just so everybody knows, Wes is one of my good friends. So just so you know, if he ever goes on a podcast and says
we have the record, friends. Me and Mo, we're good friends.
We're good friends. We're good friends. We hung out in San Francisco once in the Bay during the finals one year. So good friend, my good friend Wes Goldberg. The only four people this thing was good for was LeBron, Pat McAfee, Stephen A. Smith, and ESPN as a whole. For everybody else, it was bad. And like I get everybody who loves the drama and wants this and that, all the clickbaits and all the millions of articles that are going to come out of this and all the think pieces. This was bad as a whole. Like, this is amazing. And the thing, I'll tell you the why, which is kind of almost ironic in a way, Wes, of like why LeBron would do this. This comes on the same day they announced that Mind the Game is coming back with Steve Nash and LeBron James. In that sense. And it's almost the anti-Mind the Game thing that he did, right? Like call. That's the whole point of the Mind the Game podcast is, hey, nobody's talking about basketball. Let's talk about it, break down the game, which, by the way, I do on my Twitch show Monday through Thursdays, 11 a.m. West Coast time.
Great job of it.
But like, it's so frustrating with all of this. Like, it's kind of like, I get why LeBron did it on the Pat McAfee show. It's an FU to Stephen A. It's one of those things, and it's exactly what Pat McAfee would like. It also happened by chance that he happened to be in Indiana right at the time. Kind of the timing worked out perfectly for all of this stuff. But this is all just terrible for the game and for the sport. Like, this is all we're going to talk about. We're not even going to talk about the Pacers-Laker game, which LeBron had a great tip in at the end. We're not even going to talk about how fun that game was, right? We're not going to focus on the amazing MVP race that we have with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic. And you know why? Because LeBron's not in that race. Like, we're not even going to focus on any of the fun stuff that's going on with all this. This is going to be a distraction that's going to do big, big ratings. There's no doubt about that. It's going to do huge numbers, all of that stuff. And I know I sound very Trumpish when I say, it's always going to do huge numbers, all of that. But like, this wasn't good for the game. It's to the, like, listen, I never partake in any of this stuff. I don't listen to Stephen A. Smith. I don't like First Take. I don't like, I see the clips every now and then on Twitter. I don't watch the Pat McAfee show. If you do, by all means, enjoy, have fun with that. Everybody's got different preferences with all that stuff, but it's not the stuff I want. It's not the content I'm looking for. And I know I'm actually in the minority because ESPN is paying big bucks for these things. They're only doing it because it brings in ratings. So this is just a big ratings bonanza. If I'm Adam Silver, I am furious right now. Absolutely livid. This whole thing. And then Stephen A coming out going like, oh, if he put his hands on me, I would have swung. Like, oh God, why are we 5 years old? Why are we five? Why are we acting like this?
It's embarrassing. It's playground stuff. It's very interesting for a lot of people who are sort of out here, casual fans of the sport. I get questions. What do you think about Stephen A. and LeBron? I don't get questions from a casual fan of, do you think Jokic or SGA should be the MVP? Maybe here and there. I shouldn't say never. That's not fair. But a lot more about this kind of stuff. And, you know, I get it. Like, this is the NBA. It's fine to lean into the player movement and the drama and the personalities. I would argue that that's the thing that makes the NBA special, more special than the NFL or Major League Baseball, is we care about who these players are. Ever since Bird versus Magic and Michael Jordan, we've really cared in terms, and I say the we just in terms of general NBA fans, not even people who cover the sport, just people who love the sport, care about their personalities. That's what draws us to the sport in a lot of ways. But there's a way to overdo it too. And this feels like it's not only overdone, but almost also inauthentic. Like, this isn't why we like the sport. And it feels very performative. And we know that there's reasons why LeBron is going on Pat McAfee's show and saying these things, and why it's specifically that show and all these things. And I don't think any of it is that, like, I don't think LeBron's a mastermind, right? In this regard, I think it's pretty clear what he's trying to do. He's going on the other big rating show that's not Stephen A's show. Right. And McAfee has kind of created a little nook here on ESPN where if you have a problem, if you have a bone to pick with ESPN, you go on McAfee's ESPN show to do it. And he'll bring you on and he'll give you the space to kind of roam and do that stuff. I mean, even when McAfee had a problem with Adrian Wojnarowski, what does he do? He brings on Shams Charania all the time. And that, you know, that's kind of this place that McAfee is doing. But like I said, I'm more interested in, why did LeBron choose to say these things in that way on that platform at that time? And I'm kind of just going broader. Why do basketball players feel more and more like they have to go at the media? One of the things LeBron said in that interview was that the media that covers the sport has gotten, quote unquote, too comfortable in what they discuss. And then he uses two instances, right? Joel Embiid, right? And going at that reporter who mentioned his, and LeBron got a couple of the facts wrong, but basically, you know, that Embiid went at the reporter, the columnist in Philadelphia, who said something about his brother in a recent column. He didn't actually go up to him in the locker room and start talking about his brother, but he said it in a column. Either way, Embiid, totally fair to approach the reporter in that way. We can get into whether the physical stuff was condoned or not, but that's less of the problem.
It's never condoned. It's never condoned. The physical stuff should never be condoned in that sense. Yeah.
Right. And then he brings up Stephen A., which is obviously the personal beef. And then he kind of makes up a made-up shot at Brian Windhorst, which was completely out of bounds and false. And there's, again, like, there's plenty of places that you can go online and find why that's not true and kind of get into that conversation. But using those two instances to then go at the media in general, my take here is, I'm not telling you that everybody that covers the sport is awesome. You and I disagree with how Stephen A. is handling this, right? But my problem is when we just call it the media as an entity. It's like saying all basketball players flop their way to points. Not all basketball players do, but some do. And I don't think I'm breaking news when I'm saying generalizing is usually bad and leads to confrontations that are bad. And I just feel like the basketball players have now not only generalized the media by handpicking a few reporters who they have a problem with, or people or talking heads who are not in these locker rooms and including them in the larger media, but also conflating social media with what media is. And I think there's a real big problem here with how the sport and the players view the media, how we define the media and talk about the media. But we have a really big problem, right? And that's just me. Just personally, I just will defend the media because I'm part of it. But then there's a bigger problem is, why do the basketball players feel more and more like they have to attack and criticize the media? And if what LeBron says is that, if LeBron says that the media has gotten too comfortable, you know that there's a lot of players thinking the same thing. And I'm interested in more in what that means and why.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One, I thought the Joel Embiid thing, I did think the writer was out of bounds in bringing up the death of his
100%.
brother and all of that stuff, right?
Yep.
I did think Embiid was wrong for putting hands on him, confronting him in the locker room. Totally fine with that. This is God, I'm so old, but a long time ago, J.A. Adande was teaching a sports column class at USC, and I happened to be taking this before I was working in the NBA itself. And he kind of made a point of like, I forget the exact points of the story, but he had written an article where he ripped Kobe Bryant, a new one in the article. And he made a point, and this is very important. This will always be why J.A. Adande will always be highly respected in my book. And he's a Hall of Famer and all that. But he will always be respected for me because he said, I make a point the day after the column comes to be available for the player to say whatever they want to me. Yep. Like to say, obviously he's not saying, hey, let's fight, but like he is, right. I will be available. So if the guy has problems, I'm here. Yep. I'm not hiding. I'm not ducking. I'm available. And I think that's kind of like, for me, that's a level of respect. Also, I don't think the players understand that stuff. I don't think the players understand even how the media actually works.
You know what I mean? About Anthony Edwards as a rookie, and granted he was a rookie, so maybe I'm not, maybe this is unfair, but as a rookie, he questioned reporters in Minnesota about why they were asking him such hard questions if they work for the team.
Right. But I mean, to even go a step further, like back in the day, not too long ago, when Jovan Buha was writing for the Clippers, a beat writer for the Clippers for The Athletic, he wrote an article talking about the problems in the locker room, and Patrick Beverley looks at him going like, I thought you were with us. No, he's not supposed to be with you. He's not a Clipper. Right. And that's actually, and by the way, that's also a problem with our sports, with some of our sports media brethren, is they tend to think it's us and the way they respond, to a lot of these things. And I can go 5 hours on this, Wes, and dissect all of this stuff. But I just think the thing is, though, like, I think somewhere along the way, the sports media did get lost, did get a little bit comfortable, not in the way LeBron thinks, but did get comfortable. And in the sense of thinking they're part of the team. And this happens with a lot of beat writers, and I get it, because their success, if the team's good, their success grows with it. So they're always rooting for the team.
Being a beat writer is really weird. As somebody that was a beat writer for the Warriors for years, like, you're around the team more than you are the people that I worked with at I never saw the people at the San Jose Mercury News. Like like what you would argue, most people go into an office and they have coworkers who they see every day. The people I saw every day were Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and Draymond Green. Those are the people I saw every day. And so yes, it's hard, but that's what makes it such a hard job, is that ability to maintain that objectivity while doing that job. But there's so many different layers of the media. You have the beat reporters. And I would wonder if I could get like a moment with LeBron when he says that the media has gotten too comfortable. Is he talking about the guys is he talking about Dave McMenamin, who's covered him for years? And is he talking about these guys who have covered, or is he talking about people on TV? Or is he talking about social media and the way that they will go at LeBron and how he handles the Bronny situation or whatever it might be? I don't know. And that's the part where I get to, like, when they say media, I just don't know what they're talking about anymore. And it kind of we don't have to go this broad, Mo, but like, it contributes to the problem that people just have with, quote unquote, the media in general in this country. And I have a real hard time with just generalizing everything. Like you said, there's going to be bad apples with the Embiid situation. That guy was totally wrong to include that in his column, but he showed up, and Embiid was wrong to physically, touch him. But there's media who step out of bounds every once in a while, but it doesn't mean the media is the problem here. But I'm like, why? We've seen NBA players go at refs. We've seen them go at a lot of different things. It feels more and more now that they're going at the media than they ever have.
Yeah, and I think there's an element. Part of it too is the media is so eager to have them, to have the players and kowtow to them, and like, let's just go to all the player podcasts. Right,
I'm glad
the amount of revisionist history on all of these player podcasts is phenomenal. Is phenomenal. Like, it's amazing.
It's their
in
truth,
that sense. Like,
but it's not
it's right. Right. And nothing will piss me off more than this, it's my truth, is a phrase I wish we can just fire into the sun and get out of everybody's lexicon. Like, like Wes, I'm pretty grumpy today in general. So it's like,
right.
There's a lot of juice with me, but I just think, and I don't want to harp on this because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. I would just say, like, the thoughts here is like, my thing with LeBron and him being upset with how Bronny James is covered, it's his fault. It's 100% his fault. Is it fair to Bronny? No. The coverage has not been fair to Bronny. But they have tried to manipulate the situation as much as possible. And I say they, meaning LeBron and Clutch, to engineer so many different things that it has created a spotlight on the kid that is unfair to the kid. Plain and simple. I'm going to be writing an article this weekend, really just talking about his game. I am going to write an article for Bleacher Report focused on Bronny's game. We'll see if how that turns out. But they have made it so much. Look, he's only going to work out for the Phoenix Suns and the Lakers. They're warning other teams not to draft him. He gets drafted by the Lakers. He gets as the 55th pick, gets a pretty solid guaranteed contract. Okay, that's a little bit abnormal, but fine. If the Lakers want to throw their money away, fine. And I was defending them. I said, listen, man, it's the 55th pick. Like, who cares type of thing. If the kid turns out to be a player, great, works out for the Lakers. If not, like, whatever, they appease LeBron, that's fine. But then you start hearing things of like, Bronny's not going to go on any of the road games with the G League team and all that stuff. And all of this hurts his development as a player, but more importantly, just hurts his development and stunts his growth as a basketball player in terms of dealing with everything that comes with it. Right. And then he does do a interview with Joe Varden recently, Bronny does and stuff like that. And that's fine. But like, a lot of this stuff is all engineered behind the scenes with all of these things. And you look at it and you just got to say, like, man, you're not doing him the service. Either he's good enough to be in the NBA and survives on his own, or he's not. And by the way, if he's not, that's fine. That's a number of NBA players have come into the people have gotten drafted. Number 1 picks have gotten drafted and have washed out of the league. Like, it's fine. It's okay. But they put such a spotlight on him. Now, don't get me wrong. How the media has covered it has been awful. The way Stephen A. Smith has gone at it has been awful. I don't agree with it. I think that's unfair to Bronny. I don't care about LeBron's feelings at that point. I feel like it's unfair to Bronny in all this. And I think we've lost sight of the whole thing. This is all about, we made this about LeBron and Stephen A., but it's really Bronny who's the one that's going to suffer at the end of this. Remember, the 4 people I mentioned, and I guess one was ESPN, so it's an entity as a whole and not a person, but you get my point. None of that, of those 4, Bronny wasn't one of them. This doesn't help him. This puts more of a spotlight on him now. It makes it, it's an unfair situation that he has become a target. But I also feel like it was LeBron's doing to make him a target with his comments. I'm watching the league tonight, and Bronny can start over all of these guys.
I think some of what he's doing too now is maybe trying to backtrack some of that stuff. He maybe consciously or subconsciously knows, maybe I thrust this kid into the spotlight a little bit too much when I was trying to prop him up a little bit here and try to get him into the league. And now that he's here and has a contract, I kind of want to backtrack some of that stuff. And now I want to say, just let him be. Just let him be.
Yeah. And I want to do one more point, and I think we should move on because we've gone already way almost too long on a subject we both don't really care about. When I started in the media, and this wasn't that long ago, and I came from the NBA, not knowing anything about the media game, I knew one thing: don't become the story. That was like one of the rules in the media. We've completely thrown that away. Stephen A. Smith is part of the story. Not even, forget this LeBron situation. They filmed his entrance to the Knicks game last year. Like he was a player walking into the tunnel. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't give a flying fuck about Stephen A.'s Knicks fandom. Don't give a flying fuck about it. And I apologize. And you understand, Wes, the Band-Aid has been ripped. Like he didn't even know Quentin Grimes wasn't on the team anymore
Right.
Like let's just stop pretend like this whole fandom stuff and things like that and all of this situation. As soon as we made it about the media, and it's not just Stephen A. Smith, Kendrick Perkins is in there doing stuff. It's as soon as we've made it about the media personalities and not about the game and the players and the sport and the coaches and all the stuff that's happening, we've lost.
ESPN,
and we've lost the number one rule.
And you're pointing out everybody that works at ESPN, and ESPN has become a little bit of a problem here. We can go back to firing.
Oh,
Zach Lowe
I can also fire off stuff at TNT with Charles Barkley.
Fair.
It's because we love Chuck. It's
Right.
fine, but like he's made himself the story a bunch of times as well. You know, with comments about like the fat women in San Antonio or whatever that comment was, or
Right.
recently
But to your
complaining
point,
about
not
going to San
going so far-
Francisco.
The ESPN part of it is, well, we're going to do this and then we're going to recycle it and turn this into content, where when Charles Barkley does it, there's obviously things that we could poke holes at. When Chuck does it, at least that's the content and that's the end of the content. There's no recycling of it. ESPN is very much in this business of creating content between making the media the story and then commenting on that story. We're going to move on. But if I'm NBC and I'm taking over media rights and I'm going to put a whole show and all this content around the product, I'm taking notes on everything that is going on right now, and I'm like, okay, roadmap of what not to do.
We hope it's the roadmap of what not to do. They might be looking at it going like, look at the ratings they're getting. Maybe we have to do that.
Right.
Maybe
I hope not.
It's not. It's and same for Amazon. It might be look at what they're doing. Look at the numbers that they're getting off of this. Maybe that's the route we have to go.
I hope not. All right, we're gonna move on. Defensive Player of the Year. So this is, to me,
What a
Mo,
transition.
you know what? People don't need transition these days. I'm just gonna be like, we're moving on. That's the transition. New topic. This to me is the most fascinating race of all the awards because of the Victor Wembanyama piece of it. Right? I love MVP. I think that's fascinating. I'm not, but to me, there's MVP is a two-man race. How you fill out your ballot is another interesting conversation. Defensive Player of the Year just feels like wide open. And it feels wide open because Victor Wembanyama was the runaway favorite and then the blood clot, and now he's not going to qualify. So here's the players who don't qualify. We're going to go into just a bunch of players. We're not going to choose the Defensive Player of the Year here. That's not the goal. It's just to kind of talk through the candidates because I still have no idea who I'm going to pick. Do you?
No, but I don't have a vote, so it doesn't matter. I just chill.
No, I mean, who cares about that? So here's the players who don't qualify just right off the top. Victor Wembanyama, Chris Dunn for a weird reason, because he's not going to reach the 20-minute mark in 65 games because he's got like a million games where he's played like 18 or 19 minutes. Alex Caruso, Anthony Davis, Asar Thompson, Jalen Suggs, Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm not saying all of those guys would have won Defensive Player of the Year. I'm just saying in the broad conversation, we can't even talk about them.
In the conversation of that, for sure.
Although the one thing on Chris Dunn, so when the NBA instituted the 65-game rule, they did specify that there's a policy or a practice of some kind in place where they can, I guess, make an exception for some players. And I wonder if they look at Chris Dunn and be like, well, he played 19 minutes and 36 seconds here and 19 minutes and 54 seconds in this game. Like if we round up on some of these 19-minute games, he'll get to the 65-game mark. Then will he qualify?
I'll put it to you this. I'll put it to you this way though: you can't win Defensive Player of the Year if you're only playing 20 minutes a game. You just can't.
That's where I was kind of going with it.
You shouldn't, and you shouldn't even be in the conversation.
Right.
As great as you've been, because I mean, like then we're talking about Jonathan Isaacs, right? Yeah, exactly. Like then we're in this situation. If you are a Defensive Player of the Year, you are playing something around 30 minutes a game.
Yep.
Because defense freaking matters in this game. Yeah,
and it's really hard to play high-end defense for 30 to 36 minutes a night, whatever your minute allotment is. It's easier to do it. That's why I always like Jonathan Isaac, the best minute per minute defender in the league last year. And I had a really big Isaac's awesome. Like I'm not, but like to give him some sort of made-up award as like the best minute for minute defender, I'm like I'd rather have the defender who's maybe like 20% worse but playing 40% more of the minutes. Like give me that guy instead. Anyway, that said. I'm going to open the floor. Doesn't have to be your favorite, just a guy who you want to talk about.
I want to talk about Draymond Green because I'm looking at the FanDuel odds.
Number one.
And like he's the favorite. And it's kind of fascinating to me. It's interesting because I feel like it's the late push. And it's almost exactly. So I do a podcast on the Basketball Illuminati feed called "Do You Believe" with Zach Harper and Wosny Lambre, and we literally talked about this: should Draymond be the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year? Excuse me. And I literally said he shouldn't be it. He should be in the conversation. I don't think he's done it for the full year. He really hasn't turned up his intensity until they got Jimmy Butler. Started the season intense. Melton goes down. The team kind of flounders a little bit and struggles. They get Jimmy Butler, and then his defensive intensity picks up again. And now we're talking about him as the favorite. I said he was going to be called the favorite because he's going to campaign for it. And that's exactly playing out the way I thought it would. And I'm going to pat myself on the back. That's the whole reason why I brought it up first with that. But it's interesting in that, like, that shift of how quickly this thing can change. And that's part of the reason why the Wembanyama blood clot thing really threw everybody for a loop, because immediately afterwards it was Evan Mobley and Jaren Jackson were the top two guys. And now, you know, a week and a half away from like 8-10 games left in the season, Draymond's the front runner. It's kind of amazing to see how we look at the defense. We don't really look at it as the whole season.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's fascinating.
The Wembanyama thing created a vacuum, and somebody needed to fill it. And narrative is very powerful, right? This reminds me a little bit of when Robert Williams III went down a few years ago. And then Marcus Smart just immediately filled that void. And we had this, well, why can't a guard win Defensive Player of the Year conversation at the end of the season? And then a bunch of people said, yeah, why can't a guard win the Defensive Player of the Year? And then they voted him. And I think it was from
Seth,
Bam Adebayo. But
Seth Partnow, you can blame him for that fraudulent. First off, he wasn't even the best defensive guard in the league at that point. Drew Holiday would like a word. Yeah. And the fact Drew Holiday doesn't have a Defensive Player of the Year award in his cabinet is a travesty.
100%. 100%. And it was sort of the idea that Marcus Smart was almost like the avatar for all of the Drew Holidays and Tony Allens in the world was a little annoying. I was like, well, they don't get a trophy, so that doesn't really work. But to your point, when there's a vacuum, there's a narrative. And in that sense, it was, I suppose, Seth Partnow and the Boston Media Mafia who pushed Marcus Smart into that void and won him an award there. And Draymond Green with his podcast and his comments and his platform is kind of making his case. And good for him. Like, all these players deserve to make their case. But he is part of the conversation. He's been awesome, dude. What he did, I'm going to talk about the reasons why. Like, and I know you want to get into it, but what he did to Giannis the other night was a masterclass. And he's done things like this all year. The Giannis thing was really loud, and I thought it was really important in terms of, okay, this is how they're going to defend teams like Milwaukee that has size, and I thought that was really interesting now that they have Jimmy Butler after the trade and made those changes to the roster. He's got his highest steal and block percentage since 2017. Like, what he's doing is classic vintage Draymond stuff. And you're right. The thing against him is it hasn't been all year, but he started the year strong and now he's ending strong. And in a year where there's not like this like clear-cut winner of this award, maybe that's enough. Like, okay, you basically played at a Defensive Player of the Year level for 70% of the season. You were okay for 30% of the season. Maybe that's enough in this year. You know, I don't know. We'll kind of figure that out as we go here. But
I would push back on it being 70% of the season. But and here's the thing.
Yeah.
I will say this, and this is just when Draymond's in, he is the best defensive player in the NBA. Like, there's no question about it. I love watching him play defense, and I'm glad you brought up the Milwaukee game. Like, his defense on Giannis in that game, his stuff, his work off the weak side, his ability to sort of diagnose a situation in real time and be the solution in real time is what puts him on a level that's above everybody else. And he's undersized as a big. Like, there's no real way to like him defensively. Like, it's along the same way of like he should have way more Defensive Player of the Years as LeBron should have more MVPs. Like, it's along those lines with that. And the unfortunate thing for him, we know it's right. And we know it's a thing because, you know, the whole Rudy Gobert, it's hard to, you can kind of go back and forth during those runs and really debate them in that sense. And I know that's where the rivalry comes in. But that's like his defense is when he's in and locked in. It's so much fun to watch on the defensive end.
And because he's done that a few times, that should matter. I don't know how much it matters, but it should matter at least a little bit, right? So the other part of this,
if he wins, I won't be. If he wins, I won't be mad. But
it would be a little bit of he should have more than one. So I'm not going to be upset that he has one, even if I don't think he was the best defender in the league for the entirety of the season.
And the only thing I don't like about it is him campaigning. And to go back to our beginning question, our media friends loving the narrative spin on everything, and that's why he's gonna win it with him campaigning.
So he is the only elite defender on a team that has a top 7 defense by defensive rating. I think that matters too. Like he is propping up that defense, and I'm not including Jimmy Butler because Jimmy's only been there for like 20 games. So
no, Jimmy can't be involved in that. Like, sorry, Jimmy can't be involved in that. Like,
one thing on Draymond that I do want to note before we move on, he does basically have to play the rest of the season to qualify. So one little hamstring, calf thing, whatever, and he could also be on our list of guys who don't qualify. So Draymond here, or if he picks up a few too many technicals, like
I can't wait for that to be the situation, and then him railing on his podcast, the 65 game rule, in the same way he.
You called the first one. Bookmark this. What time stamp are we in here? I'm gonna cut this. 2031. Okay. That's perfect. So I'm gonna go to one now here. Ivica Zubac, man. He is moving up my fake ballot here. I think he has been awesome defensively all season, but he's really ramping it up lately. First of all, to your point earlier, he plays every game and plays a ton of minutes. He is so important. He is the backbone of the league's 3rd best defense. They have good defenders, Chris Dunn, Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard when he's playing and locked in on that end. But he's the anchor, he's the backbone, and there's no, like Derrick Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, Kawhi, you could argue they do a lot of similar things in terms of being out on the perimeter and being disruptive. And nobody on that team is doing what Zubac does. His rim protection numbers are elite. He defends a ton of shots at the rim, never fouls, and he never gets overpowered. Jokic doesn't get overpowered. Giannis doesn't get overpowered. He doesn't get overpowered. He might be the strongest guy in the league at this point. Him or Steven Adams are kind of going for that throne still. I think he's been sensational. He doesn't jump off the page. He doesn't have the Wembanyama blocks. He doesn't do all that stuff. He doesn't campaign for himself the way that Draymond does. But the Clippers fans are campaigning hard for Zubac, and I think they have a real strong case for him to be in strong consideration here. He's not going to win it because I don't think he has the tailwinds, but he might deserve it, man. I'm really I'm trying to figure out how many defenders have had a better season than Zubac.
I mean, Zubac is phenomenal. Like, just forget about the defensive end. His overall game and the story of Ivica Zubac is really a fun one in terms of focusing on development and him kind of progressing each year as he's gone up. I think the challenge, obviously, we know the cachet and stuff like that. He's not a name most people know, and I won't be surprised most media members probably don't know who really is his impact. They know who he is, but don't really understand his impact. You go watch some of these games, he's a massive piece for the Clippers. I'd say he's probably their 2nd most important player, and that's above Harden. I mean, it's Kawhi, and then it's Zubac for what he brings to this team defensively and offensively, and the way he plays. Like, it's pretty interesting there. I find it really phenomenal that the situation he's in constantly is he just holds up every time. It's just one of those things. He just holds up. I think you said it best when he doesn't get overpowered. He won't win it. I don't think he'll get a lot of votes, but it's a guy that deserves more recognition, not just for his defense, but his overall play. Like, he had a run where he was averaging he had 5 or 6
as a
25 or more points games. And
the rebounding numbers are insane some of these nights. Like, him as a pick and roll partner with Harden, they've really developed a nice 2-man game. And I mean, he's an elite center, man. Like, he's not Jokic, but he's up there. I mean, there's not a lot of centers that you'd rather have over Zoo at this point. The way that he's played this year, he's one of the best 5 centers in the league.
No, and I think that's more the the fun stuff where you're watching him, and he's just a backbone for the Clippers. Like, I don't think people, when we talk Clippers, the first thing we're thinking about is Kawhi Leonard. We're thinking about James Harden. We're talking about Norman Powell's phenomenal run. And it's fourth on the list if you get that far when you talk to Clippers. Nobody really wants to talk to Clippers longer than 2 topics, but it's a really important one there because I think his value is higher than people understand.
Would you consider him on like just in terms of the defensive part of it, not worried about how the media is actually going to vote this and whatever, but like on your defensive teams, if you were filling out a defensive team or a top 5 for defensive player of the year, good enough to be in that conversation for you?
He's in the conversation. I got to do a little more research in terms of it's hard at the center position because there are guys I think that are probably more deserving than Zoo at the center position, but he's in the conversation. I don't think he'd end up being a first team all defensive guy.
Let's talk about one of those centers. I'm assuming one of them would be Evan Mobley.
Yes. And also fight on Trojan. No biases whatsoever. I think we don't talk about Mobley's defense enough, and part of it's because he's taken such a leap offensively, kind of becoming more of a facilitator, shooting more threes and everything there. And then he has Jared Allen. It's kind of the Twin Towers in that sense. But just looking at the numbers, and the thing that I like to look at a lot when it comes to defense is the on-off numbers. And yeah, they can kind of be finagled a little bit. It depends who you're playing with and things like that. But the on-off numbers, listen, the Cavs defense, their defensive rating is 111.5. When Mobley's on the floor, it's 107.8. That's a pretty big drop, and I think that's, about 4 points is a big difference, and I think that's an important one with the way we see him play. And he's got to guard multiple guards. He's got to guard, not guards, wings, excuse me, and then big men, and then switch on to guards in situations. Like, he's got to be able to guard in different situations and figure out how to handle it. And I feel like he's held his own for the most part this season.
To your point with the numbers, the Cavs have an elite defense when he's playing power forward or center, right? When he's with Jared Allen, when he's on the court without Jared Allen, they're always elite. As long as Mobley's on the court, they're always elite. He's their do-everything guy. He fills every gap. He's effective in drop. He can get out and switch onto the perimeter and guard guards. He's good when he's guarding other bigger forwards. Like, he just does all of it. He's their Swiss Army knife, in the most traditional sense of the word. And he's awesome, man. Like, I take nothing away from Evan Mobley. However, I don't know. Like, I feel bad for this because he's having a season similar to like Bam's best years. And I will, admit my biases too. And like, Bam should have a Defensive Player of the Year award at this point. But why can't I get there with Mobley? Like, what do you think it is? Like, I want to be there with him. I really do. But why can't I get all the way there to the point of, if I had a vote, I would cast it Defensive Player of the Year, Evan Mobley? Why can't I get there?
I don't know. Sounds like a you problem. I'm
You're
there.
You're there?
I'm not necessarily there, but I just was being a dick more than anything else. No, I think there's an element of like, the team's defensive as a team. The defensive rating isn't crazy high, where they're not in the upper echelon with all of that, where it's not as flashy as the big time monster blocks that you get from a big man like you would get from Bam. It's not as fascinating and watching Draymond kind of diagnose things in that stuff. It's more subtle. So it's easy to forget. And it's easy to kind of slip through it. And then again, it also goes into, there's so much to talk about with the Cavs that we're focused on so many things. And just even Mobley, he's shooting more threes now. We're like, this is what we've been asking for, right? So we're focused on that part of his game more. And I think there's a lot of that stuff there where it highlights us, the royal we, and our biases, in that we tend to focus on what guys are doing, developing on offense, more than what they're developing on defense. And I think we've kind of lost that part there where we're missing the stuff where we're seeing him handle switches. I think about as well as
it is
most
more
bigs.
like, it is the Bam thing, right? It's more on what isn't happening than what is happening, right? He's not getting those 10 block games, but he's preventing that guy from even getting to the basket because he cut off that driving lane 2 seconds before anybody else would have, right? And I'm there. Like, he's an elite defender. I don't know that at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, that's the best defender in the NBA this year. And I don't I'm still trying to figure out what that is. And maybe it is as simple as, well, Cleveland is like, they're great on both ends of the ball. They're top 10 on both ends of the ball. The driver of that team is their offense. And maybe I just don't attribute as much success to Cleveland, to Evan Mobley on the defensive end as maybe I probably should. I got to really kind of sit down with this a little bit more. But he's been great, and I don't want to take anything away from him.
You know what's hard about defense, and this is the hardest thing for casual fans to fully grip, and I think even media members, it's not seeing when a defender has taken something away and realizing, oh, the offense has changed their mind and is going another way, right? Like
something else now.
We just assume that's what the offense is doing. We don't give the credit to the defender who is, I've fully taken away this option from you. And Draymond does it a lot, it's very obvious when Draymond blows up a play. We don't see it could be as simple as just like stunting. And when I mean stunting, just so for the fans who don't fully know, although it's RealGM, so most of the fans are really locked in. But it's more just kind of like, I'm here, I'm not. I'm here, I'm not. And it's that quick half-second stunt really forced the guy trying to make a pass decide, nope, I'm going this way now because Mobley's there and threatening. It's that simple. But it's so subtle, it can be missed. And I think that's the important thing. And that's what's so hard just about talking about and covering defense in general. Like it's different than the NFL.
You really have to watch it.
It's different than the NFL, right? Like we know when a lockdown corner has shut down a receiver because the team ain't passing there. So we know that's what happened, right?
Right.
We know when they it's obvious when they break up a pass or whatnot. Like we know all these things. It's easier to talk about defenses. And it's so difficult in the NBA. Like when I used to coach in junior college, our coach used to do his own stats after the game. And it was because he was marking up defense and being in the help position and deterring it. You can't tell sometimes when something's been deterred. Right. It's obvious when a guy drives in the lane, sees Wembanyama and turns around and goes, nope, I'm not shooting that layup. Like that stuff's obvious, but we don't see the other subtle things that come with it when a team is hesitant to even run a certain action. And I think that's the tough part with the defense. And that's what we miss, I think, with Mobley sometimes.
And so the guy on the opposite side of this is Dyson Daniels, right?
Yes.
Where the steal numbers are just most steals since the dinosaurs, like whatever that stat is, it's just crazy steal numbers. He's awesome. And he's going to be on a lot of ballots. You mentioned some of the betting odds that he's top 5, 6, 7 on most of these charts here. Dyson Daniels, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of think he should. If the Hawks were better, he'd be the front runner.
Yeah.
If it's hard to give Defensive Player of the Year to a guy that's in the play-in tournament, although we were going to give it to Wembanyama, who probably would have been in the play-in tournament as well if he stayed healthy, or at least in the running for it. But it's also drastically different. And again, we don't see it. It's with Wembanyama, you see all the highlights, the monster.
Well, the thing with Wemby, when he was on the court, San Antonio had an elite defense.
Yeah.
The thing about Dyson Daniels, and I love Dyson Daniels, the Hawks are 17th in defensive rating for the season. They're actually a little bit worse when he's on the court. And I know there's so much that goes into these on-off numbers and stuff, and there's a lot of noise there. But if you were super impactful, Defensive Player of the Year impactful, when we're talking about DPOYs, we're talking about guys who can be that, right? Like,
right.
Rudy Gobert for years, quibble with how many Defensive Player of the Years he has, but you put him on the court with 4 other guys, you have a top 10 defense.
Yeah,
but that's just it.
I think the beauty of Dyson Daniels, I mean, the fun stuff is just the steals.
Yeah.
I mean, the Great Barrier Thief is a hell of a nickname. And
I have a nickname for him.
Oh boy.
It's not as good, but it's not for him, it's for his action. So when he does this thing with the steals where he'll actually fall back, get behind you on a pick and roll, and then kind of reach around and poke the ball free. And then because he has like these 1,000,000 feet arms, he pokes the ball free and then gathers it with the other hand somehow a lot. And the next thing you know, he's taking off on the other end. I call it the Dyson Dash.
Gotcha. I like the Dyson Dash. That's a good
Dyson
one.
Dash is good. Okay, thank you.
But I think just to go back to it though, if the team was better defensively, and I think again the numbers just don't support him being a Defensive Player of the Year type guy. And to be honest, like steals also can be a little bit of an inflated stat. I'm not saying that's the case with Daniels, but the thing is, a lot of steals sometimes come from, gambling, offensive, and things like that. And that also could be why the numbers are a little bit bad when he's on the floor. Because we should almost, I wish there was a stat of like gamble rate or whatever, you know what I mean? Or successful rate in when he goes.
Somebody might have made that up. If anybody listening, like you said, it's RealGM Radio. We got the stats on crew here. If you know of a gamble rate stat, share it with us. I would love that. Yeah.
Just for steals, right? Like it's just along those lines. It used to drive us nuts when I was coaching when big men would chase blocks and lose rebounding position. I'm like, there's no way for you to block that shot.
It's the number one thing I look at when I'm like scouting college guys is, all right, hey, this guy averages whatever, 4 blocks a game or whatever it is. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go see how many he's actually jumping for. And he's like jumping for 17 of them. And I'm like, all right, I care a little bit less that you're averaging 4 now. No, I think Dyson Daniels deserves to be a candidate. To me, though, he's not Defensive Player of the Year, but if we had an Emmy for most entertaining defender, he probably wins it. He definitely wins it. Like, he has been the most entertaining defender, mostly only because Jalen Suggs hasn't been available enough to qualify for my made-up award. I want to talk who I might actually go with here. And the exercise here is not to decide who I would vote for Defensive Player of the Year, but we haven't talked about him yet. Lou Dort. I love this guy, dude. And we could get into the numbers, fine. Some numbers love him. Some numbers are a little so-so on him. That's okay. If you look at some of the numbers, they say Isaiah Hartenstein's the most important defender on Oklahoma City. If you look at some numbers, they say Shea is the best defender on Oklahoma City. And to all that stuff, I say, get out of here. Like, I'm watching these Thunder games. He's the most important defender on the league's best defense by a mile. They can't do what they do if they don't have Lou Dort. And I know that they have Alex Caruso and Kassan Wallace and all these guys. They can't do what they do if they don't have Lou Dort. He takes on the most difficult matchup every single night. Within the last week, he's guarded DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and James Harden. He was OKC's main guy when the Thunder beat the Celtics earlier this month. Like, he just always defends the most difficult player, and he does it at an elite level. He's awesome. And not only the one-on-one defense, he's an elite low man. He's always recovering. He's always showing. He's always doing these little things that we were talking about with Evan Mobley. He had that game-saving block against Naz Reid. What was that, last month? Like, he's just he's incredible. And I'm usually like anti the guards should win because I generally believe that the 7-footer, I know it's unfair, but the 7-footer tends to be a better defender than the guy who's 6'3". But in this case, I don't know, man. Like, Lou Dort is having a hell of a season.
Well, one, I hate your opinion on that with the centers, the things like that. There are guards that have done stuff that do stuff defensively in a way that makes it easier for the center's life.
Totally
like, there's just
I was
just a
more
whole lot of that
like
stuff.
size.
I'm going generally as well. I think it's an unfair proposition. So I just in that regard, I think more guards should have been up for the award. And have won it more often than not. I think the beauty of Dort is that it's just like sick him. Cool. Go get it. You know what I mean? Like, go get him. Yeah. And it's fun to watch the battles, with him and like Luka, right? Just the size he has the physicality. He can bang with Luka. He can fight with Luka, go back and forth with Luka. I think there's a lot of stuff there. With what Dort has, with his abilities and things like that, his reflexes, his instincts are phenomenal and top tier. Like, that's a high level dude defensively. And I think, like, for me, I'm just like, I think, at some point in his career, he should win it. And I think that's the level that he's at. Is just, he's like the equivalent of a shutdown corner at times.
Yeah, he's the new Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday's taken a step as he's gotten older here. I think that's fair to say. He's the guy that if you talk to players in the league, who's the guy that you don't want, like perimeter players, who's the guy you don't want guarding you? 99% of them say Lou Dort, like he is that guy, and he's getting that reputation now. So he might actually end up being one of these guys who, if he doesn't win it this year, might start getting a little bit of a reputation build enough to where he can really be part of this conversation, despite the fact that he plays in Oklahoma City. But if the Thunder win the championship and they start getting a little bit more shine, maybe that's something that can help him. I have one more guy here, unless there's somebody that you want to bring.
No, let's
we'll be really quick on this. You got it. Rudy Gobert has to be on the list, man. Like, he just has to be. Still anchoring a top 6 defense. That now is without Karl Anthony Towns. Towns defensively on the Knicks is a disaster, but he found a voice for Minnesota last year. He's really helpful at that other spot next to Cat, and he's just doing it, man. He's still doing it. All the analytics love him. He's in every alphabet thing that you can find. Gobert is right there with all the other guys we talked about, so it would be unfair to at least not include him in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's along the lines of like whenever you talk defensive player of the year at the beginning of the season, there's a reason why Gobert's always on the list early on, right? Like just what he does defensively and what he allows, he allows guards, he allows Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Dakhil Walker, Mike Conley to be more aggressive on the perimeter because they know he's there if they get beat. And I think that really affects and opens up the defense for them, gives them more ability to be more aggressive and attack more forcefully. I think that's just the beauty that you get from Rudy. Problem is, and this is the thing I'll say is that it's always going to be the issue, and some of it's scheme that teams run. I felt like Quinn Snyder for years kind of put him in a really bad spot with some of the schemes. You put him in situations where he's got to be out there on the perimeter. He's got to guard guards. You're in a difficult spot.
Yep. All right. We're going to transition to a new segment as we do here on RealGM Radio. This is called No Duh. So I wanted to play this game with you. We kind of know who the contending teams are at this point. I want to talk about if they don't win the NBA Finals, it'll be because blank. And I know because we're looking a lot at the matchups, and I think this is going to be fascinating because I have no idea who's going to win the championship, and I think there's a bunch of teams that could legitimately win it here. But I do wonder, like, all right, a couple months from now, we look back on this team lost. Are we going to be like, yeah, no wonder they lost this thing. This thing was so obvious the entire time, and they just didn't have an answer for it. So that's sort of the idea. If the blank don't win the finals, it'll be because blank. So we can take it in a few different directions, but I want to start with the Thunder. What do you think? If they don't, I'll throw to you first. If they don't win the finals, it'll be because what?
Jalen Williams is not the guy everybody thinks he is.
Yep. I basically had the same thing. I had because somebody besides SGA doesn't step up, but I was kind of not naming Jalen Williams.
I'll give you my quick synopsis of OKC because I'm not as high on OKC's chances as everybody else. Okay, and this gets me this by the way might look incredibly bad come June, right? I might look like the biggest dumbass. And at that point I'll just pick a fight with a random player and that'll be everybody will talk about that instead.
There you go.
But the thing is, like, they don't have a plan B. Right. And to me, that's a regular season. We can win 60 something games because we're so good. And our plan A is so good. And teams don't have proper time to really account for our plan A that we don't ever develop a plan B. They play one way. It's all through Shea. And then if he doesn't have it, they're hoping the other guys can make things happen. And they do. And they're good players. But the question is, what happens if a team says, hey, we're A, just going to let Shea cook and guard everybody else, or B, we're going to throw everything we have at Shea and see if the others can beat us. What happens then? Because I don't know if they have another way to go, right? Like, they are so focused. I kill teams for years that are not versatile. When I mean not versatile, not able to play another way. And I think the big lineup is an interesting one. I wish those guys were healthy all year because I think they could have developed a plan B just off of those two guys. But I think it's a bit hard now. And they play really well off of each other. And I don't know if there's enough time to make that plan B. I don't know if when a team sits down, if they play Ty Lue in the first round and the Clippers are fully healthy, right? And I took some shit on the internet because after the Clipper game where the Clippers lost to them by 2 without Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, because I said, I think the Clippers can give them a run in the first round. I didn't say they could beat them, but they can give them a run. And my thought is, you give Ty Lue 3 days to put in a game plan to say, how am I going to attack Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? How am I going to attack the Thunder? I think he could put some stuff together that's going to push them. I think there's a lot of good coaches when you give them time. And that's my question too of hey, like, regular season's one thing.
Right.
We get time to sit there and really sort of put together the plan. There's problems. And this is an issue. We've seen this. I mean, Milwaukee with Giannis for the longest time.
Yeah.
Only played one way, and it got easy. Once they got Drew Holiday, they were able to actually play another way and really use all three guys. Like,
Right.
You got to have something. And the playoffs, it's not just how good's your plan A. What's your plan B? What's your plan C? What's your plan D? At some point, somebody's going to take away what you want to do in the series.
And to your point,
how are
plan
you going
A
to respond to that?
Is awesome in the regular season. It might be good enough to get all the way to the NBA Finals.
It really might be, and I might look like a complete ass.
But to your point, maybe it's not enough to beat Boston. That has Holiday and Derek White and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all these other guys. Like, and to the point of our game, this is why this team did not win the championship. They were able to use Plan A to get all the way to the NBA Finals, but ultimately this is why they didn't win. So maybe it's, and I do have this written down. My only thing is the Plan B. I think Oklahoma City would tell you our Plan B is our defense. And our defense isn't just getting stops. Our defense takes the ball away and creates full court opportunities. But I'm with you.
I want to push back on that. I want to push back on that because I'll just say
push back on the pushback.
Push back on that being Plan B. If your attitude is our defense is our Plan B, you don't have a Plan B. That's just your team. That's not a Plan B, right? That's just your team. And again, this is the same thing. You can't depend on we're going to force the other team into turnovers.
Right.
What happens when you run into a team that slows the game down, doesn't turn the ball over? They did last year against Dallas, and they lost, right? Like, what happens when you run into those teams that say, we're going to take care of their defense is actually, if I have time to sit down and plan it, I can scheme it. I can come up with my
you have a team like Houston that routinely plays Oklahoma City tough because they don't pass the ball. They don't put it in the air enough for you to go get it, right? So if you get an isolation-heavy team,
like watch. I would be fascinated to see them versus the Lakers at full health because the Lakers at full health have 3 ball handlers.
Yeah.
Right now they got a lot of great defenders on OKC that would be really interesting. But if you're doubling Luka and LeBron in the same possession, all right, Austin Reeves is going to cook.
Yeah.
And that's going to open everything else up because then you're going to start accounting for Austin Reeves, and then you're going to slip a little bit on LeBron, and then you're going to slip a little bit on Luka defense. Like, if their attitude is our Plan B is our defense, I said, no, your defense is always just your defense. That can't your Plan B on offense is what I'm talking about.
And I want to go back to Jalen Williams here because that's the right name. He wasn't good last year in the playoffs. He needs to be good this year in the playoffs. And if he's not, there's going to be a lot of conversation around Jalen Williams. And should they trade Jalen Williams for Kevin Durant or something like that? Like, that will happen if he doesn't step up this postseason, which feels unfair, but that's the way it is. I really need Chet Holmgren to be that guy.
Well, they won't. I don't think they're really going to be a championship team. Might be a championship team this year, but like for me, until Chet Holmgren's your number 2 option. But there's a few things here I just want to touch on before we move on. I know we're running short on time. One, yes, Jalen Williams will be the main target, but it will skip over the fact that Mark Dagnall needs to also be the seat needs to get a little warm because it's the coach's responsibility to create the Plan B's, C's, and D's, and to do that throughout the entire regular season with all that stuff and sprinkling that stuff in. So I don't want him to just kind of get to skate on all that stuff. The other thing too, and this is for the Chet Holmgren piece, they have to develop him attacking the switches better, more often and more regular than him standing on just the perimeter. Porzingis takes the Celtics to another level because he can attack the switches.
It felt like they were doing that before Holmgren got hurt. You remember in the beginning of the year, they were using him on ball a little bit more, and then he got hurt, and then Hartenstein got back, and then they've been trying to figure out what this 2 big lineup is going to look like with Holmgren and Hartenstein, and there's just not been as much opportunity for Holmgren to do that, but I thought they were really trying to do it at the beginning of the year, and to your point, they've kind of gotten away from it the way that it kind of felt like an initiative at the start of the season. So, all right, Celtics.
I can't.
If the Celtics don't win the finals, it'll be because what?
I bury myself in a hole. The Celtics don't win the championship if they're not healthy. That's a cop out. That'll be the only one I'll use health on, by the way, for everybody there. I have another reason, but that's that if they don't have a fully healthy squad, and I'm looking at Kristaps Porzingis,
right,
and like that, there's a problem. I think they could skate without Drew.
Fair enough, but he's been in and out all year.
But, yeah, for sure. But I think Porzingis is the the game changer for exactly what I was talking about with Chet Holmgren, right? His ability to attack switches and in the pick and pop. And when teams want to switch, he goes straight to the free throw line ISO. It becomes very difficult to guard that team.
They didn't need him last year to get through the Eastern Conference, but the East is way more difficult, particularly at the top this year. And I even think, teams 4 through 6 are harder than they were last year too. I have, if the Celtics don't win the finals, it'll be because all that stuff that worried us in the regular season was actually a problem. Right? Like every Celtics fan will tell you, foot off the gas, they don't care as much. You see guys in and out of the lineup all the time. And maybe that is probably true, right? Like that's probably true. But if it's not true, then everybody's going to look pretty dumb at the end. And that's why I'm like, yeah, no duh. Maybe it was just really hard to be this elite for 2 straight years. The last repeat winner in the NBA, 2018, we're getting at the point in Adam Silver's NBA where winning the title last year might be the best predictor of not winning it this year. It's been kind of schemed out of the league is to have back-to-back champions. Now, very few of these champions have been built like the Celtics, right? You look at those prior champions and they all had really massive talent or minor to massive talented players leave immediately after that championship, whether you're talking about Kawhi leaving after the Raptors won or even like Bruce Brown leaving Denver after they win, minor to major talent leaving. The Celtics are pretty much the same exact team. We haven't really seen this version of a team try to go for a repeat, so maybe that's just dumb. But you look at some of the stuff that's worried us in this regular season, their free throw rate is near the bottom of the league. The 2-pointers, they don't do them. They're last in points in the paint. And teams can score on them. Teams can score on them in the regular season. So
this is the besides me cheating and using help, right? This is the other reason that they don't win the championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't defend at the high enough level like they did last season. And they take too many threes.
Yep.
Last season, they were able to take as many threes as they did because of their defense was playing at a much higher level. Now, maybe it gets there in the playoffs. Maybe it kicks up a notch when they get to the playoffs and it's go time. We've seen it from teams that have won the championship, kind of like, all right, let's just get through the season. Cleveland starts out so hot, they're like, man, forget it. We're not even going for the number 1 seed. Like, let's just kind of coast through it and whatnot. And maybe their defense jumps up a notch. They can shoot a ton of threes only if they defend at the high level. Because when you shoot a ton of threes, you're still going to miss a lot, right? Like you're going to have that random game where you go completely off and like make 25 of them. But you're going to have games where you're not going to make a lot of them.
Right.
But your defense bails you out and that stuff. And I think that's how they lose. Their defense doesn't reach the level that it needs to be at to be able to hold up the number of missed threes that they might have in a game.
That's the entire formula, right? Like we've seen Charlotte try to do one part of the formula and they stink. Right?
Well, Charlotte just shoots. Like, no, there's no formula in Charlotte. There was no thought.
They want to get up a certain amount of attempts.
Look at LaMelo Ball just going, I'm gunning.
It's the LaMelo Ball formula. No, but to your point, like, right, so the Celtics, I brought up the free throw attempt rate. It's near the bottom of the league, right? And so it's like, okay, well, if the threes aren't going in, you can't get to the line. You don't really get to the rim that much. But at the same time, their opponents actually have a worse free throw attempt rate when they play them. So they're still coming out positive. Nobody's shooting free throws, essentially, right? Like, that's the whole idea. They're still coming out positive. So the part of the Celtics formula is, yeah, we're not going to do this stuff, but we're also going to take it away from you too, so that you can't do it. But teams with size, teams that are really good at getting to the paint, teams that are really good at getting fouls, they do tend to have that success against the Celtics during this regular season. Now, we'll see. Like, every Celtics fan will tell you they're going to ramp it up in the playoffs. Maybe that's true. That's probably true. Mm-hmm. But if they don't win, it'll be because they didn't. The Cavaliers.
The Cavs don't win the defense because their backcourt defense is not holding up.
Yep.
Right? Like, look, teams are going to target Garland. Teams are going to target Donovan Mitchell. They're going to attack them over and over again, and I think specifically Garland. And it's funny because we literally just talked about Evan Mobley as Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but it's going to be those guys not being able to hold up defensively. And I think that's the issue for them come playoffs is their backcourt just gets demolished on the defensive end.
I had the same thing, and then I had like a little B point here. Also, that DeAndre Hunter wasn't the guy that everybody thought he was when they traded for him. Like, I like DeAndre Hunter fine, but it's a little.
But he was the. I'll defend them. I'll fight you on that one there.
No, I like the deal. I'm just wondering, like,
me and you, Stephen A. LeBron style. Our media members fighting with each other. I would just, and I agree with you. I know you like the deal and all that stuff. There was no other option, right? Like I wouldn't, and that's why I wouldn't put it on them, but I'd put it on Mitchell and Garland because we know that's where the defense is going to be. We know where offenses are going to attack them.
To your point, exactly. Even if DeAndre Hunter gets slotted on Jason Tatum in a series, Tatum's going to get the switches until he's got Garland in front of him or Mitchell in front of him, and he's going to attack that. You're right. That's the Cavaliers one. The Nuggets, we can kind of breeze through these next few, but I have the Nuggets, the Lakers, and the Warriors. Is there another team that I'm missing here?
No, I think that's, I mean, you want to do the Knicks just so we don't get New York fans mad at us?
Sure. The Knicks won't win the finals because they won't win the finals.
I was going to say just the defense isn't good enough. But
because the defense is good enough. All right, knocked it out. Yep.
Done. Move on.
The Nuggets won't win the finals because they just don't take or make enough threes. No duh.
I would say the Nuggets don't win the finals because they're 1.5 guys. It's Jokic and then Murray sometimes. Yeah. They need more. They need more firepower. They don't have it. Listen, I know Russ has been great this season. I'm always scared depending on Russ, period. Russ is great until he isn't. And then, there's, MPJ comes and goes. Aaron Gordon's in and out of the lineup. I know he's shooting the 3-ball well, but listen, as a team, I'm more than happy to lose the series with Aaron Gordon shooting 47% from 3, and Jokic not having the monster nights that he does. So I'm more than happy to live with that if we lose that way. Yeah. So for me, I just don't think they have the firepower.
Are the Nuggets Knicks West? Awesome offense. We know what they want to do. So Jokic Murray 2-man game. Jokic doing things. We know what the Knicks want to do. Brunson Cat 2-man game. Defense, very questionable. Obvious holes outside of what they do besides their number one thing on offense. Like, I don't know.
I would
a little bit. There.
I would say not, only because Jokic is such a different nuclear
He's literally the best
option.
Player on the planet. Yeah.
You saw that pass last night to Aaron Gordon. Defend that.
No, I can't. Their defense is also really bad, and it's worse than it's been. Even when they won the championship, they've always managed to be in the top 15 of the league. They're down to 22 right now. I know that Aaron Gordon has been in and out of the lineup, and that's a big part of this. But even when Aaron Gordon has been out there, he's dealing with a nagging injury. I get that. But if he's dealing with a nagging injury, then he's dealing with a nagging injury, and that's going to impact the playoffs. So
right.
It's not been where it's been defensively. It's not close to where it needs to be either. And I don't really ever see them dialing it to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, this team, like when Denver was at its best defensively, like they never ranked really high, but they could dial up a stop. They could put the right lineup out there. They could really lock in and get a stop when they needed it. And I haven't really seen the Nuggets dial it up to that degree. I can't really think, I'm sure they've done it this season, but I can't think of a time. So they're just a little bit short. They're in this conversation because they have Jokic and they're awesome, but that's going to be why they don't win the finals if they don't win the finals. The Lakers. If the Lakers don't win the finals, it'll be because blank.
They don't have enough size. The rim protection is something that would concern me. I love their small ball lineup. I think their closing lineup of Luka, LeBron, Reeves, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Rui Hachimura is when you look at their whole roster, that's exactly how I would close games. I love it. I think they play really well. I think their defense is very good, but I worry when they run up against a team with elite size. Look, I saw the game that they had against Denver where they beat them in Denver and kind of took Jokic completely out of the game. I don't know if that's something you can do in a 7-game series repeatedly. And I worry about that with them. And the other thing too is then, it's just, do they have a point of an attack defender? Like that's the thing too. Like when they play OKC, all right, so who's guarding Shea exactly? Like I know Dorian Finney-Smith, okay, and like it gets really difficult, I think, for them when they get the speedy guards. I think they have a hard time defending that, and I don't know if you're going to play Gabe Vincent 35 minutes, instead of Austin Reeves or whatnot.
Yeah, and Gabe Vincent will foul out if he's guarding Shea. Like I'm similar to you, right? Like I'm a little more broad on my thing, but if the Lakers don't win the finals, it'll be because the defense was never as good as we kind of thought it was for those 2 weeks. right? Like it was a great 2 weeks where they were number one since whatever that, like since February 1st, they had the best defense in the league, and because of this thing and that thing. But since February 1st now, they're 12th in defensive rating, right? And they're kind of around there for the season. They're okay defensively. I don't think it's a huge problem, and I like a lot of what JJ Redick's doing there. I think schematically, there's some really interesting things there where they're really daring the Aaron Gordons of the world to beat them, right? And they're gonna overhelp on the strong side and do all these things, but I don't know that that strategy is going to work against really great offensive teams that just have weapons all over the place, or against teams that have a lot of size that can also break that strategy a little bit. If it's Jokic in the middle of the paint as opposed to somebody else, they don't have the size. To your point, Mo. So yeah, their defense just isn't that good. It's fine, but it isn't something that can. It's not like. It's not Oklahoma City. It's not these teams that are really carried by their defense either. So their offense is going to have to be really good. And maybe that's, I think that's why they're on this list, is because their offense can be that good. And if their defense can be good enough, then that's how they do win the finals. But last one. If the Warriors don't win the finals, it'll be because I'll go first on this because I basically stole your Lakers one. It'll be because they don't have enough size and because they played a team with size. To me, the Warriors are the most matchup dependent team in the Western Conference right now.
Yeah, I would actually go a different way, and I go, they don't have enough offensive firepower after Steph Curry. Like, depending on Jimmy to get you to the free throw line over and over and over again is great, but that's a lot. You're asking for a lot, and I think that's where it gets really kind of challenging for them and what they're going to try to have to do. Like, I think that's where I'd be curious to see how they handle it. And like, Curry can go nuclear. Draymond's going to be, they're all going to be having a ton of fun. And I love the way they've been playing, but I just don't know. And everybody's kind of trying to prop up Kuminga. I don't know if Kuminga's that guy. I don't know. And it's okay. Well, you have your answer. I mean, Jimmy's clearly their second option, but I don't know if that gives you enough offensive firepower that you need, especially in the West.
It feels like Buddy Hield has to be like really good for 4 games.
Good luck with that.
Right?
4 games in a row?
4 games in a series.
Yeah, I know. I just good luck with that.
Either way, right? It's so Golden State was obviously in town this week for the big Jimmy Butler reunion game, and talking to some people around the team, they are, and this will come as no surprise, supremely confident. The Warriors are supremely confident. They're not scared of the Thunder, which again does not come as a surprise, but they legitimately think that they have an answer for every one of these teams. But it also feels like they are betting on playoff Jimmy just being there, and we haven't seen playoff Jimmy since the first half of the second round of the 2023 finals run, before he kind of twisted an ankle against the Knicks. And you look at his numbers since then, it's not been Michael Jordan against the Milwaukee Bucks levels that he was in the first round of that season. So it's a big bet for a guy who's 35 years old. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We'll see. But if it doesn't, that'll be why they don't win the finals. Mo, kept you a long time here. We covered a lot. Really appreciate the time, man.
Oh no, I'm happy to be here. And like I said, Wes, always good to be with a friend.
A real friend, a true friend.